In a quiet village nestled between golden fields of rye and the deep shadows of an ancient forest, there lived a merchant, his kind-hearted wife, and their only daughter, Vasilisa. She was beautiful, but not in the way that draws gasps or stares. Her beauty was gentle, like a breeze in summer. Her voice was soft, her eyes thoughtful, and her presence so warm that even the wind seemed to pause to greet her. Her mother, too, was known for her gentleness. She knew the old herbs, sang lullabies older than memory, and moved through the world with a grace that wrapped the house in peace. But one autumn, as the leaves turned and the air thinned, her health began to wither like the garden after the first frost. One evening, as the sun melted behind the tree line in ribbons of orange and rust, she called Vasilisa to her bedside. Her voice was faint, but her eyes were steady. From beneath her pillow, she took a small wooden doll, plain but lovingly carved, with bead-black eyes and a faint, knowing smile. "This doll is more than it seems," she whispered, brushing Vasilisa's hair back. "When you are lost or afraid, feed her a crumb of bread and tell her your troubles. As long as your heart stays kind, she will help you." Vasilisa clutched the doll, her tears falling silently. That night, her mother's breath grew slow and then stopped. The house remained, its walls, its warmth, but something essential had left it. Her father still stood, but the heart of the home had vanished. Time passed, heavy with silence. The merchant, grieving and weary of his loneliness, remarried a woman from a nearby town, a widow with 2 daughters of her own. She arrived veiled in black silk, her words sweet, her eyes cold. At first, she treated Vasilisa with courtesy, but once the merchant departed on his next long journey, the stepmother's true nature slithered out like smoke. Gone were the soft words. She gave Vasilisa the hardest chores, the meanest food, and a cold spot near the fireplace where the ash gathered thickest. The stepsisters teased her without end, mocking her clothes, her quiet voice, and the doll she kept tucked away. "You think you're better than us?" they laughed. "With your silent eyes and your little toy?" But Vasilisa never raised her voice. She did as she was told, and each night when the moon hung high, she would whisper her sorrow to the little doll and offer it a crumb from her bread. And though her body ached and her spirit waned, she woke each day and worked. The seasons turned. Spring brought no comfort. Summer wilted the flowers. And when winter came, the hearth seemed colder than ever. Then one bitter evening, the last log cracked and fell apart in the fire. The flame died, and shadows overtook the room. "We need fire," the stepmother said sharply. "Vasilisa, go into the forest. Find Baba Yaga. Ask her for light." The stepsisters stifled gleeful smiles. They all knew the tales. Baba Yaga, the witch of the woods. Her hut stood on giant chicken legs and spun of its own accord. Her fence was made of bones, her gate lit with burning skulls. She rode through the air in a mortar, steering with a pestle, sweeping away her tracks with a silver broom, and she never gave without asking a terrible price. Vasilisa's hands trembled, but she said nothing. She wrapped her thin cloak around her shoulders, tucked the doll deep into her pocket, and stepped out into the night. The forest loomed like a sleeping beast. Trees arched overhead, their branches clawing at the sky. The wind howled low and bitter, and the path beneath her feet grew narrower with each step. Still, she walked. Her breath puffed in clouds. Her boots crunched frost and leaves. And when fear crept up her spine, She placed her hand over the pocket where the doll rested. Finally, after hours of walking, the trees parted into a clearing lit by a terrible glow. A fence of bones rose high around it, and atop each post sat a skull, its eyes flickering with green fire. In the center stood a crooked house on two enormous chicken legs, shifting and creaking as though alive. The house turned slowly, its door spinning to face her. Then, a shriek. Wind whipped through the clearing as a figure flew overhead in a massive mortar. Baba Yaga landed with a thud, her silver broom sweeping behind her. She was tall and thin as a splinter, with wild gray hair, skin like tree bark, and a nose that nearly touched her chin. Her iron teeth gleamed in the firelight. "Who dares come to my gate?" she growled. Vasilisa bowed low. "I am Vasilisa. I was sent to ask for fire." "Fire?" Baba Yaga's eyes narrowed. "You don't get fire. You earn it. If you serve me well, I'll give it. If not..." She smiled, wide and sharp. "I'll grind your bones to flour and bake you into pie." She turned and waved her hand. "Come inside. Tomorrow we work." The hut groaned as Vasilisa entered. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with jars of floating eyes, dried herbs, and pickled things that twitched. The hearth glowed a sickly green. Bones dangled from the rafters. A shadowy cat stared from the corner. "Sleep," Baba Yaga snapped. "The house will watch you. If you try to run, it will walk after you." Vasilisa lay on a thin mat, her heart pounding. Quietly, she took out her doll, fed it a crumb, and whispered, "I'm afraid." The doll stirred in her hand, and warmth bloomed in her chest. At dawn, Baba Yaga kicked open the door. "Sort this," she barked, pointing to a mountain of grain mixed with dirt and ash. "Every seed in its place by nightfall, or be dinner." Then she vanished into the trees. Vasilisa sat beside the pile, overwhelmed, but the doll slipped from her pocket and set to work. It moved swiftly, silently, sorting grain with impossible speed. By dusk, the task was done. The mountain had become tidy sacks. Baba Yaga returned and scowled. "Humph, beginner's luck." The next morning, Baba Yaga stood at the doorway, broom in hand, eyes sharp as needles. "Yesterday was simple," she muttered. "Today, we test your strength." She pointed to the crooked yard outside, tangled with roots and scattered bones. "Sweep the yard until it gleams. Not a twig, not a speck of ash left behind." Then she threw a pile of soiled linen onto the floor, stiff with age, yellowed with rot, stained with things that didn't bear naming. "Scrub these until they're white again." She walked over to a bucket beside the hearth. It was bone dry. "And fetch water from the well," she said, "the one near the trees with the red bark." Vasilisa blinked. She had heard the villagers whisper of that place, where the well was guarded by a great black serpent said to strike at anyone who approached with unclean hands or an impure heart. But Baba Yaga wasn't finished. "Oh, and polish my dishes, all of them," she added, "even the ones with teeth." Then she vanished again, vanishing into the trees with her mortar and broom. Vasilisa stood still for a long moment. The tasks were impossible. The well alone could be her end. She knelt by the hearth, reached into her pocket, and gently pulled out the doll. Its bead-like eyes gleamed in the firelight. I don't know how to do all this, Vasilisa whispered, her voice trembling. Please, help me again. The doll bowed its little wooden head. Then it leapt from her hand. First it scurried to the yard, weaving between roots and stones. As Vasilisa followed, the broom swept faster than her eyes could follow. Leaves flew away, twigs vanished into piles, and even the moss peeled back to reveal smooth earth below. Next, the doll returned to the filthy pile of clothes and waved a tiny hand. Water filled the wooden tub on its own. The doll dipped the rags in, scrubbing with a leaf from Baba Yaga's shelf. The stains faded, the fabric softened, and the air filled with the scent of lavender and ash. Then came the hardest task. The well stood deep in the woods, half swallowed by thorns. The red-barked trees leaned in like sentinels. Coiled around the well was a long, black serpent, its eyes glowing gold. Vasilisa stepped forward slowly, her hands steady. The doll sat on her shoulder, silent. She knelt and bowed her head, not to plead, but to show respect. I've come to fetch water, if you'll allow it, she whispered. The serpent stared at her, unmoving. Then it slithered back and vanished into the underbrush. Vasilisa filled the pail and made her way home without spilling a drop. Finally, she entered Baba Yaga's strange kitchen and approached the shelf of dishes. Bowls with clawed feet, plates with grinning mouths, and cups that blinked when touched. With a soft cloth and steady hands, she cleaned each one, humming one of her mother's old songs under her breath. By nightfall, the house was spotless. The water bucket stood full. The clothes were folded. Even the yard glowed pale in the moonlight. Baba Yaga returned and said nothing for a long time. Then she narrowed her eyes. "You work too well," she muttered. "Too well for a girl with no magic." She leaned close, her breath smelling of ash and herbs. "Tell me, how do you manage it?" Vasilisa kept her voice calm. "By my mother's blessing." At those words, Baba Yaga hissed and reeled back. "I want no blessed thing under my roof!" she shrieked. She stormed to the fence, yanked a glowing skull from its post, and shoved it into Vasilisa's hands. "Take your fire," she growled, "and leave. Never return." Vasilisa ran through the forest, the skull lighting the way, its glow never dimmed. She arrived home by dawn. Her stepmother opened the door, stunned to see her alive. The sisters stared at the skull's fire. "Put it by the hearth," the stepmother muttered. Vasilisa obeyed. The skull's light flared. Its gaze swept across the room. The air grew hot. The stepmother shrieked. The sisters screamed. By morning, all three were gone, reduced to ash. The skull's fire went out. Vasilisa buried it in the snow and walked away in silence. She wandered until she came upon a city where an old woman took her in. Vasilisa began sewing to earn her keep. Delicate shirts, embroidered tunics, robes stitched with precision. Word of her work spread. One day, a shirt she had sewn reached the Tsar himself. He demanded to know who made such a thing. When Vasilisa was brought before him, she blushed. He smiled. "So much grace, in your hands and in your eyes," he said. "Will you stay?" She glanced at her doll, tucked as always in her pocket, and nodded. "Yes." And so, Vasilisa became queen, not for her face, but for her strength, her heart, and the kindness that never faded. But deep in the forest, where bones still guard the path and skulls burn in silence, Baba Yaga listens, waiting for the next knock at her gate. Subscribe for more timeless stories from around the world, new shorts every week.